Und wenn die großen Kolonnen unserer Bewegung heute siegend durch Deutschland marschieren, dann weiß ich, ihr schließt euch den Kolonnen an. Und wir wissen, an uns liegt Deutschland, in uns marschiert Deutschland und hinter uns kommt Deutschland.
Come on, come on! Separate the officers for interrogation! That's it! Come on! This side, this side! I'll be damned.
General Spatz, we meet at last.
Vice Marshal Goering.
My wife, my daughter. Your 8th Air Force has destroyed my beautiful Luftwaffe and leveled our beautiful cities. Even so, I prefer to surrender to a fellow airman.
Gentlemen, may I?
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is wide and high, deep in the heart of Texas. The sage in blue is high for you.
Musiden zum Städle hinaus. Städle
Unbelievable.
15 plus
7.
22. Good.
9 times 9.
Good morning, General Spatz.
I'm afraid I have to ask you to get dressed and pack for travel.
Where are you moving us?
Only the Reichsmarschall. You're being transferred to Bad Mondorf.
Well, you know, it's a very pleasant spa, but why must I go alone?
Because that's where they're rounding up German war criminals.
No! No.
I am sorry about that. Get dressed, please.
You must be brave. Very, very brave. Hedda, you here? Come on, sweetheart. Come
You know who you are? It's the Jew butcher of Krakow. And we've seen the camps, too. That cheap bastard!
I must say I was lucky when the arms ministry was destroyed in an air raid in 1943. It rid me of useless paperwork and pencil pushers.
Sir, what do you think was the single most effective thing you did during the war?
When Hitler appointed me his Minister of Armaments, I threw out the military chiefs and turned to the professionals, industrialists and engineers. Then I borrowed the ideas of Walter Rathenau, the great Jewish chief of the German economy during the last war. Standardization of parts, the division of labor, and the maximum use of the assembly line.
Thank you, Dr. Speer. Gentlemen, we'll now break for lunch.
Dr. Albert Speer.
Obviously.
You are under arrest. What made you war crimes?
Move aside. Pay attention, orders are in. Now listen up. You'll all be taken to different places of detention. The following prisoners will go to Bad Mondorf as defendants in future war crimes trials. Step forward. Field Marshal William Keitel. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz. Colonel General Alfred Jodl. Follow me.
Let's go. Over there. Line up over there. Come on, let's go.
Corporal, new arrivals, identify yourself.
Fritz Saukel, sir. Head of labor conscription.
Former head.
Julius Streicher.
Publisher of... Sir, I can't pronounce it.
Der Stürmer.
It's fifth.
You bankers are all Jews. You think I don't know that?
Shut up.
Hjalmar Horace Greeley-Schacht, formerly president of the Reichsbank and minister of the economy. I do not understand why I have been accused here.
I'm your jailer, not your lawyer. You'll get your day in court.
Hans Fritzsche.
Chief of radio operation in the Nazi propaganda ministry. Rudolf Hess, former deputy Führer.
Yes. You.
Joachim von Ribbentrop.
Nazi foreign minister. You.
Colonel, this is Dr. Robert Lai, head of the German Labor Front.
You're Albert Speer?
Yes, sir.
What's wrong with this man?
His mind is not what it used to be.
He's an old drunk. It finally caught up with him.
I said shut up!
Colonel, this man, Streicher, is a disgusting person. A pornographer and a Jew baiter. I do not wish to be out with him.
We make no distinction.
Colonel, we respectfully protest our arrest. We were only following orders, nothing more. As a fellow soldier, surely you must understand.
Now you're no longer a soldier. You are all war criminals. All of you. Lock them up. These Nazi bastards. Where's guard?
Reichsmarshal Hermann Goering, at your service, sir.
You are in the United States Army stockade at Bad Mondorf. Did they tell you why you were here?
Because we lost the war, and I assumed to be shot or hanged.
That's up to the court.
I've heard of this court. Its opinion does not concern me. The opinion of the German people, that is what really matters.
Is that so?
It is so. History will show that everything I did was for the greater German Reich. There will be statues of Hermann Goering all over Germany in 50 years. Little statues, perhaps, but one in every home.
You're as fat as a house. Starting right now, I'm putting you on a diet. You will be mentally and physically fit to stand trial.
Robert, I can't believe this. My brother came here as a college student. I still have the picture book he brought me. It was nothing like this. This isn't even the same city. There were medieval bridges and gingerbread houses.
This was also the site of some of Hitler's biggest rallies. Nuremberg was the spiritual center of the Third Reich.
Your name is called, get your ass on a truck. Von Papen. Sure.
When we board the plane, get a seat by the window, dear boy. It may be the last view we have of the fatherland.
Alfred Yodel. On your feet.
Swab yourself.
I beg your pardon?
Der bucket and der mop. Use them. Pick it up. Pick him up now! Pick him up! Hey! Lieutenant! Hey! With us! Back off!
Easy, easy. Okay. Put him down. Easy. That's it, easy. Okay.
Doctor?
He'll rest now. His heartbeat was up to almost 300 beats a minute. Could have led to heart failure.
That's just great. That's just what I need. To lose the biggest bull in the roundup. Lieutenant.
Wheeler, sir.
I'm making this man your personal responsibility. He is not to exert himself. As God is my witness, he will be in the best of health when they hang him.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Lieutenant Ayres, with your permission, I shall call you Lieutenant.
That's fine, sir.
Good.
Good morning. I am Major Neve. I am the officer appointed by the International Military Tribunal to serve upon you.
Wait. You're British?
I am.
Finally, a civilized man. Neve. What is your given name?
Airy.
Airy. Major Airy Neve. I have heard this name before. Airy, like the wind. Why would I have heard this name?
I was captured, tortured by the Gestapo, and escaped twice.
Ah, I see. You've earned your given name.
I am the officer appointed by the International Military Tribunal to serve upon you a copy of the indictment in which you are named as defendant. I am also here to advise you as to your rights to counsel.
I care nothing for lawyers. You can find one for me, Major Airy of the Wind. We're men of culture.
We both know the truth. The victors will always be the judges. The vanquished, always the accused. Yes?
Open it up.
Until I've studied this, I cannot speak to the accuracy of the charges against me. But I acknowledge the necessity of this trial and accept my inclusion in it.
How can you say that before reading the charges?
There's a common responsibility for the crimes that were committed in the name of the Third Reich. No one is blameless, apart from the victims.
But we were just following orders.
I know nothing about crimes against humanity.
Here's a list of lawyers.
Jews. No Jew names! I want to be defended by a German naval officer.
I was a lawyer myself, full of ideals.
Why don't you just shoot us now? Why don't you just shoot us now?
Das ist Berlin, Berlin, die ewig junge Stadt, das ist Berlin, Berlin, die meine Liebe hat, genau im Mittelpunkt der Welt, hat sie der Herrgott hier gestellt. Du mein Berlin, Berlin, du Perle an der Spree, wer dich erst...
Rudolf, you put it on the wrong foot.
Was?
The shoe.
Yeah.
This seems completely mad.
It is an act. He is being clever.
If he was so clever, he wouldn't have spent the last 4 years in an English prison.
I turned my diaries over to the Americans voluntarily. You see, they proved that I tried to resign as Governor General of Poland. Did not approve of the persecution of the Jews. Anyone reading my diaries, they will know what was in my heart. They will understand that those things I wrote about the Jews, the orders I signed, they were not sincere.
I believe you, Herr Frank. And yet, you did do those things. How do you explain it? I don't mean legally. I'm not a lawyer or a judge. I mean, how do you explain it to yourself?
I don't know. It's as though I'm two people. The Hans Frank you see here, and Hans Frank, the Nazi leader. I wonder how that other Frank could do those things. This Frank looks at that Frank and says, "You're a terrible man."
And what does that Frank say back?
He says, "I just wanted to keep my job."
Friends, when we begin this grotesque farce tomorrow, my friends, never forget that we are here for one reason, and one reason only. We lost the war. But someday, a grateful German nation will honor our legacy. Doctor, what do you have? You have one German. You have a fine man. 2 Germans, a Bund. 3 Germans, a war.
Are you really in such a good mood, Herr Goering? Or is this your way of handling fear?
Fear? What do I have to be afraid of?
I've ordered hundreds and thousands of men into battle, knowing full well that not many would return. Why should I, their leader, tremble when called upon to face the enemy? I know that I am a condemned man. That is of no consequence. There is still work to be done. And mark my words, it will be done. One Englishman, an idiot. 2 Englishmen, a club. 3 Englishmen, an empire. Good morning, Lieutenant Wheelers.
Morning, sir. It's time to go, Reichsmarshal.
How do I look?
You look fine, sir. How do you feel?
Excited. I've waited many months of silence. Now at last I'm being heard. Shall we?
I'm not allowed to do that, sir.
Oh, yes, of course.
Music.
Oh.
Hermann Göring.
I have a statement which I will now read to the court.
The defendants are not to make a speech. They are only to enter a plea.
I declare myself, in the sense of the indictment, nicht schuldig, not guilty.
Rudolf Hess.
Nein. Nein.
Record that as not guilty. Joachim von Ribbentrop.
Nicht schuldig.
Wilhelm Keitel.
Nicht schuldig.
Ernst Kaltenbrunner.
Ich bekenne mich nicht schuldig.
Alfred Rosenberg.
Nicht schuldig.
Hans Frank.
Nicht schuldig.
Wilhelm Frick.
Nicht schuldig.
Julius Streicher.
Nicht schuldig.
Walter Funk.
Nicht schuldig.
Hjalmar Schacht.
Nicht schuldig.
Karl Dönitz.
Nicht schuldig.
Erich Reder.
Nicht schuldig.
Baldur von Schirach.
Nicht schuldig.
Fritz Saukel.
Nicht schuldig.
Alfred Jodl.
Nicht schuldig.
Franz von Papen.
Nicht schuldig.
Arthur Seyß-Inquart.
Nicht schuldig.
Albert Speer.
Nicht schuldig.
Konstantin von Neurath.
Nicht schuldig.
And Hans Fritscher.
Nicht schuldig.
All the pleas have now been entered. Justice Jackson.
Jackson's speech, pedantic. Tiresome lot of nothing. I nodded off twice.
Well, the food is better today. You think they'll feed us like this every day? They always feed you well before they hang you.
Yeah, that's so true.
They can't hang us. We're soldiers. They have to shoot us.
Please, stop this talk. We must concentrate on our defense.
If you're not going to eat, Frank, give it to me. It's a crime to waste such good food.
Look what they have done to your beautiful city.
Nuremberg is not mine.
But it was. Was anything ever more extraordinary than the Parteitagen you stage here every September? The night skies would light up like a bonfire as we carried our torches through the streets, 250,000 of us on the way to the Zeppelin fields. I remember standing there for hours, basking in the radiance of the Fuhrer. And then I would take a group of my Hitlerjungen to the river, where we'd bathe together. We had to cool off from the fires that were burning within us. But now that just seems like a dream. A strange, wonderful, frightening dream.
It was not a dream. It was a nightmare. Of our own making, and it's time to wake up from it. The look in Hitler's eyes was not radiance. It was madness.
Is the British prosecution ready?
Yes, indeed we are. Your Honors, with your permission, I wish to read from a sworn affidavit by one Hermann Friedrich Graeber,
a German construction manager who, in a civilian capacity, was employed by the German army in occupied Ukraine from 1941 to 1944. On several occasions, he observed the mass murders of local Jews committed by the SS or Schutzstaffel, the Nazi party's police and security organization. One such occasion, he writes, took place on October the 5th, 1942, near the city of Dobno. That morning, Herr Grebe was informed that all 5,000 Jews from that city were to be taken by SS trucks to a place near his building site, where they were to be shot and buried in large pits. He continues. Thereupon I drove to the site and saw near it great mounds of earth. Several SS trucks stood in front of them. I heard rifle shots in quick succession coming from behind one of the earth mounds. Those who had just got off the trucks, men, women, and children of all ages, had to undress upon the order of an SS man who carried a whip. All these people had the regulation yellow patches on their clothes and thus could be recognized as Jews. And without screaming or weeping, these people undressed, stood around in family groups, kissed each other, said their farewells. I watched a family of about 8, a man and a woman with their children and 2 grown-up daughters. An old woman with snow-white hair was holding the youngest, perhaps 1-year-old, in her arms and singing to it and tickling it, and the child was cooing with delight. All the people around were looking on with tears in their eyes. The father was holding the hand of a boy about 10 years old and speaking to him softly. The boy was fighting his tears. The father pointed to the sky, stroked the boy's head, and seemed to explain something to him. At that moment, the SS man at the pit shouted to his comrades. The latter counted off about 30 persons and instructed them to go behind the earth mound. Among them was the family that I have mentioned. I well remember a girl, slim and with black hair, who, as she passed close to me, pointed to herself and said, 23. I then walked around the mound and found myself confronted by an enormous grave. People were closely wedged together and lying on top of each other so that only their heads were visible. Nearly all had blood running over their shoulders. Some of the people shot were still moving. Some were lifting their arms and turning their heads to show that they were still alive. The pit was at least 2/3 full. I estimated that it already contained about 1,000 humans. The victims, completely naked, went down some steps which were cut out of the clay wall of the pit and clambered over the heads of the people lying there to the place where the SS man had directed them. They lay down in front of the dead or injured. Some caressed those who were still alive and spoke to them in low voices. Then I heard a series of shots. I looked back into the pit and saw that the bodies were twitching, and the heads, lying already motionless, were on top of the bodies that lay beneath them. When I walked back around the mound, I noticed another truckload which had just arrived. This time it included the sick and the infirm. An old, very thin, very frail woman, terribly thin legs, was undressed by the others who were already naked, while 2 people held her up. The woman was obviously paralyzed. The naked people carried the old woman around the mound
And the shooting continued.
Signed, Friedrich Gräber.
Did any of you ever hear of this Gräber? Huh?
Rough day, Reichsmarschall?
On the contrary, we had an excellent lunch, nice view of the city. And in the courtroom, we had the best seats in the house.
Cuffs off!
They go on about this Gräber person. It doesn't concern us. We were not even mentioned.
You must have very little evidence against us.
I always suspected the British prosecutor was a Jew. Now I am sure of it.
Shut up, psycho! Please don't be so naive. We're on trial. Of course they're going to say terrible things about us. They have not even begun.
Lock him up!
Happy dreams, Lieutenant.
Good night, Reichsmarschall.
Mr. Petcheleg, while you were imprisoned at Dachau, were you at one time asked to participate in a medical experiment?
Yes.
And the Nazi doctor who supervised that experiment, Dr. Rascher, did he ever explain to you its purpose?
He said the Luftwaffe had a problem, that its pilots shot down over the North Sea often survived the crash into freezing waters, only to die later after being rescued. The purpose of the experiment was to prevent these deaths.
And what experiment did he devise?
First, I helped to strip other male inmates naked and put them into water tanks.
You were forced to do this to fellow inmates?
Yes.
And then?
Then we added large pieces of ice. We put thermometers into their rectums to make sure the men were freezing. Then some of them we plunged into hot water, others in warm water, others we put next to naked female inmates so the doctor could learn which method would best revive them.
Mr. Petcheleg, would you be so kind as to read this conclusion from Dr. Rascher's meticulous records?
Rapid rewarming was in all cases preferable to slow rewarming because after removal from the cold water, the body temperature continued to drop rapidly. Rewarming by animal warmth was too slow.
Thank you. Mr. Petcheleg, do you recall whatever became of the subjects of Dr. Rascher's experiments on behalf of the Luftwaffe?
Most of them went into convulsions and died.
Lieutenant, I have come to the conclusion that the sentences are already being carried out. Justice Jackson means to bore us to death, and he is succeeding beyond his fondest hopes. Now the Fuhrer, what a speaker. At a rally here in Nuremberg, he held an audience of 250,000 people in the palm of his hand for an entire afternoon. You know, it was such a nice day. Laughing, joking. And then they showed that horrid film. Propaganda. Anyone can do it. Little of this, little of that, and before you know it, still.
Good night, Lloyd. Good night, Reichsmarshal.
Wenn wir marschieren, sind wir zum deutschen Tor hinaus. Schwarzbraunes Mädel, du bleibst zu Haus, ein darum Mädel, Mädel, wink, 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 unter einer grünen Lierlind sitzt ein kleiner Fink, 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 ruft nur immer Mädel, wink.
Sie ist ein kleiner Fink, 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 ruft nur immer Melodie. Der Wirt muss morgen, soll die Trappe kämpfig sein, sonst werden wir morgen beim anderen ein darum Mädel, Mädel, Wink, 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 unter eine grüne Violine. Sie ist ein kleiner Fink, 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 ruft nur immer Melodie. Sie ist ein kleiner Fink, 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 ruft nur immer Melodie.
Herr Göring, do you believe that the Nazi Party came into power legally?
I do. And I'm happy to explain in detail the history of those first elections. But I will add that once we came to power, we were determined to hold on to it under all circumstances. We did not want to leave this any longer to chance, to elections, and to parliamentary majorities. It had always been our plan, once we came to power, that we would eliminate the Reichstag, dissolve the regional parliaments, and individual rights.
Where did the idea come from to combine the ceremonial head of state and the head of government in one person? Adolf Hitler.
That's quite simple. We took our example from the similar dual roles of the President of the United States.
And the idea for concentration camps?
The idea was mine. It was a question of removing danger. Only one course was available: protective custody. How could the party rule until it had established order? And how could it maintain order with its deadly enemies, particularly the communists, running free?
No for...
Open it up.
I don't understand. Why are you doing this?
Inside.
Me? I'm just following orders.
Why am I being punished like a schoolboy? Speer. Speer's behind this. He must have talked to Colonel Andrus, persuaded him into this line of action.
How do you know it wasn't me? Why Dr. Speer? Is there some kind of rivalry between the two of you?
He is ashamed of being a Nazi. I am not. He wishes to infect the others with his shame.
You have no shame. The world has now seen proof of the horrors committed by Nazi Germany. You're comfortable defending every bit of it.
I've seen so many horrors already. The carnage of the First War, thousands of my countrymen maimed, degraded, starved. No, my dear doctor. I am not an inhuman monster who has no regard for human life. These atrocities are not indifferent to me. You know, we are accused of so many appalling acts. It is hard to keep track.
Did you try?
My concern was war. And in war, each nation has its own selfish interest. You have to be practical. I am a practical man. And I'm a soldier. And a soldier's code is obedience.
Obedience.
This amuses him.
Blind obedience without responsibility. Is there nobody in this country that will take responsibility for anything? Nobody who can say no?
Take a look at every cell in this block. What do you see? Yes men. All the no men are 6 feet underground. What is this? You're not Jewish, are you?
Yes, I am.
I see. Well, this is a very interesting situation for both of us.
You are perhaps aware that you are the only living man who can expound to us the true purposes of the Nazi Party and the inner workings of its leadership.
I am perfectly aware of that.
And you, from the very beginning, together with those who you were associated with, intended to overthrow and later on did overthrow Germany's previous government, the Weimar Republic.
That was my firm intention.
And upon coming to power, you immediately abolished parliamentary democratic government in Germany.
We found it no longer to be necessary.
Is it not true that people subsequently were thrown into concentration camps without recourse from the courts?
You must distinguish between two categories. Those who had committed some kind of treason against the new state were naturally turned over to the courts. The others, whom one might expect such acts, but who had not yet committed them, such as the functionaries of the Communist Party, who were attacking us in the thousands.
You've answered the question, thank you.
I need to explain further.
Well, you'll have the opportunity to explain further under re-examination from your own counsel. Now, did you prohibit all court review of the cause for taking people into what you were calling at the time protective custody?
That I answered very clearly, but I should like to make an explanation in connection with my answer.
Your counsel will see to that. Now, about the concentration camps.
Mr. Justice Jacks, the tribunal thinks the witness ought to be allowed to make what explanation he thinks right in answer to this question.
The tribunal thinks that you should be permitted to explain your answer now, and it will listen to that explanation.
I want to say that I issued a decree that those who were turned over to the concentration camps should be informed after 24 hours of the reason and allowed an attorney after 48 hours. This by no means rescinded my order that a court review of these measures was not permitted.
Now, by protective custody, you mean that you were taking people into custody who had not yet committed a crime, but you believed might quite possibly commit a crime in the future?
Yes, just as extensive protective measures are being taken in Germany today on
I
a
didn't ask
tremendous
you about Germany today.
Mr. Justice Jackson,
This is poor preparation.
the witness may finish his explanation.
You say that you were against the attack on Soviet Russia, yet you gave no warning to the German people. You brought no pressure to bear to prevent the attack. You did not even resign to protect your place in history.
We were at war, and such differences of opinion could not be brought before the public during war. This was the case in your own country. As to your second question.
That will suffice.
I'm not finished. Secondly.
Your Honor, please.
The witness must be allowed to have his say.
Secondly, as far as my resignation is concerned, I do not wish even to discuss that, for I was an officer, a soldier. I served my country.
Now I ask you
Thirdly,
this. Your Honor, please.
Thirdly, I was not the man to forsake someone to whom I had given my oath of loyalty every time he was not to my way of thinking.
Your Honor.
It never, ever occurred to me to leave the Fuhrer.
Your Honor, the witness is adopting a contemptuous attitude toward this tribunal, which is giving him the trial that he never gave a living soul, nor dead ones either.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm ready for the next question.
I think this is probably a good point to adjourn for the day.
Da-dee-da-dum, da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. Da-da-da-dum, da-dee-da-da, da-dee-da-dum, da-dee-da-da-da-dum, da-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da.
You're not hungry, sir?
Oh, I'm too excited to eat. Did you hear what I said? My reply, when he asked me why I did not resign? I lectured him about loyalty. You should have seen Jackson's face. His face. It's a totally foreign concept to him. You know, if I didn't know better, I would say Jackson was a Jew. No. Keep it. My initials, see? Engraved.
That's real nice. I'm never gonna forget this.
I know, Lieutenant. I know. Sit down.
You know, my friends call me Tex.
All right. Tex. Let me tell you something, Tex. America will soon learn that they are backing the wrong philosophy here. We should both be together fighting the forces of communism.
You think?
Oh, yeah. You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we both think, huh?
Yeah. This was a very nice gesture.
Oh, what the hell? I figure it's probably their last Christmas in here.
Merry Christmas, Colonel.
that you are here. Please, sit. You are the only one I can really talk to.
But you don't talk to me, Field Marshal. Not really.
I tell you everything about my family.
Yes, but not about you. I would like to understand how a man like you, a man of your background, could have drafted an instrument like the commando order. Allied soldiers found behind enemy lines were shot rather than captured. Or the night and fog decree, suspected resistance members were arrested in the middle of the night and secretly murdered. Because of you.
I know. I am dying of shame.
Don't you think it's time you admitted that to the rest of the world?
I'm not in the mood, all right? No. 9, get off. Get off!
Das war schwul.
You were signing orders that broke international laws and treaties. How could you not question what you were doing?
Does the lieutenant say to his captain, "Just a minute, sir. I have to consult the Hague Convention to see if I am allowed to carry out your orders." If we had disobeyed, we would have been arrested. And rightly so.
And you realize without the support of his generals, Herr Jodl, Hitler could not have waged war.
It is a soldier's duty to obey orders. That is a code I have lived by all my life.
And that code extends to the people who ran the death camps?
I'm sorry, sir.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, my friend. Come in.
Thank you.
Come in. Sit down. Sit down.
Thank you.
Oh, it's good to see you.
I know that Christmas time can be a lonely thing away from home. Merry Christmas, Reichsmarschall.
Oh, my dear Tex. What luxury, huh? Prost. Cognac?
Yeah.
So, what would you be doing now, eh? Back in Texas?
On Christmas morning, we'd open our presents and then go to church. And after that, we'd head over to Grandma and Grandpa's for a big roast turkey dinner. After that, Dad, Grandpa, and me, we go out back hunting for pheasant, quail.
Hunting. Hunting was my passion. I was Germany's chief gamekeeper.
No kidding.
Oh, the shooting around my estates at Cairn Hall was wonderful.
Did Hitler ever go hunting with you?
I shouldn't tell you this, but Hitler did not approve of hunting. He felt that killing animals was immoral. He was a vegetarian, you know.
Yeah?
Oh, yes, he was a vegetarian. Yeah, but that did not stop him from being the most gracious host in Europe. His dinner parties were legend, always the finest caviar, champagne. Though he did not partake, he was not intolerant. He would dazzle his guests with every view under the sun until dawn. I remember once we were celebrating the triumph of Compiègne, where we savored the sweet revenge of the French having surrendered in the very same railway car that the Germans had capitulated in 1918, you know.
That must have been something.
Oh, it was. Believe me, it was. You know, Rex, I have made my career as a military man. And I have to say, you remind me of some of the finest young German soldiers who served under me.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
In your newspaper, Herr Streicher, you wrote that the Jews are a nation of bloodsuckers and extortionists. Do you think that that's preaching race hatred?
No, I do not think it's preaching race hatred. It is simply a statement of fact.
Dr. Funk, you were president of the Reich Bank during the war.
I was, yes.
And you accepted unusual deposits into your bank, didn't you?
I do not know what you refer to.
I am referring to deposits sent to you by the SS from concentration camps.
I have no knowledge
Inside
of...
the Reich Bank vaults, there were literally piles of jewelry. Gold watches, gold earrings, gold eyeglass frames, and gold teeth.
Many people deposit valuables in the bank, and the bank is not required to look into them.
Prior to 1939, exactly how many of your customers deposited their teeth into your bank?
You've heard a guard at Mauthausen concentration camp testify that you watched while the gas chamber was demonstrated on inmates.
I never set foot in Mauthausen.
And we have heard eyewitness testimony from 3 people that you were at Mauthausen 3 times.
They are lying.
And before he died, the commandant at Mauthausen signed this statement that you ordered him to put 65,000 Jews in a tunnel and seal it off rather than allow them to be liberated by the Allies.
He is lying!
And is it not a fact that you are simply lying to the tribunal about this as you have lied about everything else in your testimony?
That is also a lie!
Kaltenbrunner has asked the Commandant of Auschwitz to testify in his defense.
If that's a joke, I don't get it.
I don't get it either, but it's no joke. The British have him in custody, and they've agreed to transfer him here to testify.
Maybe Kaltenbrunner just figures he'll look better by comparison.
Wait a minute. We're not really going to allow this, are we? Let the guy walk in, say God knows what on the stand, give Kaltenbrunner an alibi?
Might be a cheap price to pay, though, for the opportunity to cross-examine him later on.
During the entire time you were commandant of Auschwitz, did Ernst Kaltenbrunner ever visit the camp?
No.
Not once.
Never.
Thank you.
1 minute, please.
Mr. House, how long were you the commandant of Auschwitz concentration camp?
From the beginning.
And what was its purpose?
At that time, to house prisoners who were being held in protective custody.
And after that?
I was called to Berlin by my boss, Reichsführer Himmler, in 1941, and he informed me that the Führer had ordered the final solution of the Jewish question. I was not sure what I was supposed to do, so Adolf Eichmann advised me to visit a camp at Treblinka to learn from its operation.
And what did you learn there?
Actually, I was not impressed. It was taking the commandant there 6 months to eliminate 80,000 Jews using monoxide gas. I had a better idea. One of my Auschwitz guards had accidentally sniffed a chemical disinfectant called Zyklon B, and had passed out immediately. It occurred to me, if a little of this chemical killed lice, enough, perhaps, would kill a human. I tested it on Soviet prisoners of war locked in a room, and it worked. Within 3 to 15 minutes, they were dead.
And then?
I built gas chambers to accommodate 2,000 inmates at a time, compared to Treblinka's 200. And I built 4 large ovens to cremate the remains. It became possible to eliminate 10,000 people in 24 hours. But that was at peak operation, which was exhausting for my staff. On the average, we would dispatch 2,000 people a day.
How many men did it take to dispatch 2,000 people a day?
I had a staff of approximately 3,000 men.
And during your tenure at Auschwitz, how many people did you dispose of in this fashion?
Approximately 2.5 million.
No further questions.
I wish to make this clear. I did not tolerate gratuitous cruelty. My men were there to exterminate people, not torment them. Any misconduct by the guards was punished, I can assure you.
The witness is excused. Court is adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
My life was entirely normal. Even while doing this extermination work, I would say I led a perfectly normal family life.
How would you describe that life?
I've always been happiest alone. I never had any real intimacy with my parents, with my sisters.
Commandant, do you feel that the Jews you murdered deserved their fate?
I have always been taught that the Jew was an enemy of Germany.
So when you were ordered to turn your prison camp into a death camp, you never once thought what you were doing was wrong?
I was an SS man. We were trained to obey orders without thinking. Does a rat catcher think it is wrong to kill rats?
A rat catcher catching rats. Is that the kind of thinking it takes to carry out state-sanctioned mass murder? Not just blind obedience, but also a belief that your victims are not human.
Let me ask you this. What was Hiroshima? Was it not your medical experiment? Would Americans have dropped bombs as easily on Germany as it did upon Japan, killing as many civilians as possible? I think not. To an American sensibility, a Caucasian child is considerably more human than a Japanese child.
America was at war with Japan, a country that had attacked it without provocation. You murdered millions of your own citizens.
And what about the American citizens of the Japanese race who were put into protective custody in your own concentration camps?
That was wrong.
And why was this not done to American citizens of Italian and German descent?
I said it was wrong.
And what about the Negro officers in your own army? Are they allowed to command troops in combat? Can they sit on the same buses as the whites? The segregation laws in your country and the anti-Semitic laws in mine, are they not just a difference of degree? Let me tell you, from the beginning of the century, through the First War, until the rise of Hitler, the Freemasonry of the Jewish merchants consistently undermined the German economy and the nationhood of the fatherland. That is why we made anti-Semitic laws, and why you, my friend, can never understand anti-Semitism. Why? Because you are a Jew. This has been a poor excuse for a trial. But firstly, I must reiterate my lack of knowledge for these terrible mass murders. which I cannot begin to understand. And furthermore, I condemn wholeheartedly. As to the trial, the statement of the defendants were accepted as true only when they supported the prosecution. They were treated as perjury when they refuted the indictment. This is not a basis of proof. Why am I in the dock being treated as a common criminal? I say to my judges, have no illusions. Since the three greatest powers on earth, together with other nations, fought against us, we finally were conquered by tremendous enemy superiority. Justice has absolutely nothing to do with this trial.
Defendant Albert Speer.
How could so advanced, so cultured, so sophisticated a nation as Germany have fallen under Hitler's demonic sway? The explanation is modern communications. No longer does a leader have to delegate authority afar to subordinates, exercising independent judgment. Given modern communications, a Hitler can rule directly and personally. Thus, the more technical the world becomes, the more individual freedom and the self-rule of mankind becomes essential. This war has ended on the note of radio-controlled rockets, aircraft approaching the speed of sound, submarines and torpedoes which can find their own targets, atom bombs, and the horrible prospect of chemical warfare. In 5 to 10 years, this kind of warfare will offer the possibility of firing rockets from continent to continent with uncanny precision. Through the smashing of the atom, it will be possible to destroy 1 million people in New York City in a matter of seconds with a rocket serviced by perhaps 10 men. A new large-scale war will end with the destruction of human culture and civilization. That is why this trial must contribute to the prevention of such wars in the future. A nation believing in its future will never perish. May God protect Germany and the culture of the West.
Go on, eat, eat.
Do you think that we would be allowed to take some of the food home with us?
I don't see why not.
Each defendant will stand as his name is called to hear the judgments on the 4 counts applicable to him, and the sentence if found guilty on any of the counts. The counts, numbered 1 through 4, are conspiracy to commit aggression, the commission of aggression, crimes in the conduct of warfare, and crimes against humanity. Defendant Hermann Göring. The tribunal finds you guilty on all 4 counts and sentences you to death by hanging. Rudolf Hess. On the charges of crimes against humanity, the tribunal finds you not guilty. But we find you guilty on counts 1 and 2, and thereby sentence you to imprisonment for life. Admiral Wilhelm Keitel. Guilty on all 4 counts. The tribunal sentences you to death by hanging.
Defendant Hans Frank. The tribunal finds you guilty on counts 3 and 4 and sentences you to death by hanging.
Julius Streicher. Guilty on count 4, crimes against humanity. Death by hanging.
Defendant Schacht. The tribunal has come to the conclusion that the evidence against Hjalmar Schacht has not been established beyond a reasonable doubt, and therefore finds that Schacht is not guilty on this indictment.
Quiet, please.
The defendant, Karl Dönitz, guilty on counts 2 and 3. The tribunal sentences you to 10 years imprisonment.
Foreign Minister von Ribbentrop. Guilty on all 4 counts. The tribunal sentences you to death by hanging. Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Guilty on counts 3 and 4. The tribunal sentences you to death by hanging.
Balder von Schirach, guilty on count 4, 20 years in prison.
Alfred Jodl, on all 4 counts, guilty. Death by hanging.
Hans Fritscher. Not guilty.
Franz von Papen. Not guilty.
Walter Funk, guilty on counts 2, 3, and 4. The tribunal sentences you to imprisonment for life.
Defendant Fritz Sauker, guilty on counts 3 and 4. Death by hanging. Defendant Albert Speer. The tribunal finds you not guilty on counts 1 and 2, but you have been found guilty on counts 3 and 4. Albert Speer, the court sentences you to 20 years imprisonment.
Lieutenant, my dear Tex, why this long face? Have I not told you there's a special place in Valhalla waiting for me?
I don't know. I just thought things might have turned out differently, that's all.
Well, you know, they might have done. But for one very unfortunate thing. Those mass murders. I must tell you, I could not see their purpose. They were absolutely unnecessary. They made no sense from a nationalistic point of view. Our legacy has been forever tainted. But make no mistake. Everything Hitler did before the war was right. The German people knew it. And one day they will eventually remember it. And you must remember it too, my dear Tex. When you remember me, remember that, eh?
Yeah.
Now, the practical matters. There are a few things I want to give you.
No, sir.
Please, please. Where I'm going, I must travel light. It's inscribed, see, with my name. Take it. Take it. The few valuables I have, they are in my blue briefcase in the baggage room. Can you retrieve that for me, my dear Tex?
Yes, sir.
I have only one question to ask you. Is there absolutely no possibility that I may be allowed to face a firing squad and die a soldier's death?
None.
Just as well. I hear the Americans are very poor shots. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must write a letter.
For the rest of my life, Herr Reichsmarschall, people will ask me what your final thoughts were. We'll have nothing to tell them.
You can tell them this. I say, for now and all time, The foreigners who impose the sentence upon me may murder me, but they have no right to judge me. That I deny them. Now, you must excuse me. I do have to write this letter. Thank you. My one and only sweetheart, my life came to an end when I bade you farewell for the last time. Do not grieve, my dearest one. Since then, I have felt at peace with myself and consider my death a deliverance. All my thoughts are with you and our own dear sweet child. My last heartbeats of our great and eternal love.
Mein Gott. Get dressed.
Get a doctor! Somebody get a doctor!
Cyanide.
Son of a bitch.
State your name.
Joachim von Ribbentrop.
You have anything to say?
My last wish is that Germany realize its destiny. I wish peace to the world.
You have anything to say?
I now join my sons. Deutschland über alles.
defying an innocent man.
I ask God to accept me with mercy.
Heil Hitler!
All cleaned out, everything. The cells have been scrubbed clean. Nothing's to be left.
Nothing. Dankeschön.
Thanks.
You know, when we get home, we've got some decisions to make. Some personal decisions.
Bob, let's just wait till we get home.
Hello, you two. You know, it may sound strange, but I can't help feeling a touch sentimental about all this.
I understand.
I got a letter from a friend today, saying that because of what we've done here, none of it can ever happen again.
What do you think?
Well, we can hope, can't we?
Bye.